Thanks, guys. Thanks, Nick. Hey, dude, so nice to have you back. We love that you're worshiping with us this morning. Thank you, man. Love it. Yeah, thanks for that. Isn't that great to have old friends come back and bless us with their gifts? Yeah, and the way that they serve Jesus. That is wonderful. I loved that. Thank you, guys. Thank you, worship band, worship team, for leading us to God. If you don't know, even before they sang their first note or played their first note or sang their first word, the Spirit of Jesus is resting in this place for you as you come in here. And you may not know it or feel it, but He is here, and the Spirit of God is here, and it's a good thing. Well, as we allow Jesus just to speak to us this morning, my name is Ed. I am a Converge pastor, privileged to be that with you. Dustin and his beautiful wife are out escaping this weekend, which is great. Glad they can on a 3-day holiday weekend, like the other people who aren't here in the seats. And that's really good. You know, I am privileged to be able to partner with him so that I can do this, so he can do that. Because our pastor works hard, and he needs moments to break and rest and go. And it's good that we have a diverse and wonderful team to fill in while he's not here. Is that great? That our pastor can have some rest and some time. Absolutely. Well, let me tell you a little bit about, like if it was me going somewhere, I got to say, I hate getting lost. In fact, I have Uber, not really, but responsibilities. I'm taking some friends taking some friends in the Golden Girls section of life, four of them, to San Francisco tomorrow. So starting about 8:30, I just need your prayers. I covet your prayer. As I have to chaperone these ladies to San Francisco. Fortunately, once I'm there, I get to just drop them off and drive away. So then they're on their own. No, actually, they're going to go have some fun. So I hate getting lost. I've already planned my route for tomorrow, mostly because there's all that, they're shutting down I-80, right? So near Vallejo, I think, or something. So I'm like, where am I going to go? I'm not going to tell you because I don't want don't text me. I got this figured out. So just keep it to yourself. But I don't want to get lost. And why don't I like being lost? Really, primarily because, and ladies, you're going to be okay with this, because I don't want to ever be late. If you're here in the mornings, I'm here at 7, right? I mean, I pull in on the dot. I am here to get things open up and get things started, unless I'm just like gone for the day. So I don't want to be late. So I have started using Waze. I love that app. Do anybody use that? Or maybe use Google Maps or maybe Apple Maps, whatever. I use Waze. I like Waze over Google. I like Waze over Google because I like to watch the little cars go by me with the little happy faces on them, you know. And then I like the interaction. It keeps me going, hey, is that car still over on the side? Oh, I don't know. Let me find that out, you know. Yeah, it's still there. Yep, right? So I enjoy using Waze. That's a really good app for me. And I know you probably think it's weird that I use it when I leave like the Converge office to go teach at Bradshaw every day. I use it when I come back. I use it when I go home. Why? You would think by now I know where I'm going. So why would I use it? Traffic. In fact, I could guarantee you that just about any given day, it routes me a different direction. This day I'm going down I-99 to Laguna. Nope. This one I'm going down Calvine to Consumnes River. Nope. This time I'm going to go and wind through some houses to get, every day it takes me somewhere else, navigating me around the problem spots. Love that. So that's why I like to use that. I tell you what, when I grew up in Portland, that's Portland, Oregon, that's where I grew up, there's kind of, because of the terrain, right, all the hills and valleys, there's really only one way to get somewhere, you know. One road goes over the hill, another one goes around it. And you kind of just like, going to my parents' house was like Oakfield Road, then you drive down Hereford, then Nelson. There's just one way. And if there's bad traffic, you're stuck. To go around would take 3 times as long as just to wait it out, you know? When I moved to Sacramento in 2005, it's a big, I'm like, well, how do I get there? I don't know. You can go this way. Okay. You know, I was kind of like, so Waze provides me a little comfort. Like, you should go this way. Okay, now tomorrow it may say something different, but at least I get to follow a big purple line. Go figure. What if there was an app like Waze that would guide you to Jesus? Let's call it J's. No, I don't know. But what if there was an app that would guide you to Jesus? Huh? Get up in the morning, flip the app on, shoot. Yeah, the way to Jesus today is pray for this and do that, and and here's where Jesus is. It doesn't work that way, right? And good thing too, probably. But if there was a Waze app, do you think getting to Jesus would be more like Portland, where you just take this one road and you're done? Or more like Sacramento, where I could take this road, this road, this road, or that road to get to Jesus? Now, I'm not talking about getting to heaven. I'm talking about finding my way to Jesus. He's the way to heaven. So don't think I'm a heretic here. Get that clear on the video. But I think there might be more than one way into Jesus, who is the one way to Father. So that's what I want to talk about today. Let me pray. Jesus, I pray that, our hearts are open to the move of your Spirit to bring us closer to you today, somehow, some way. And because we're all in different places today, we need you to find us wherever we are and pull us towards you. And Jesus, I love you for that. I love you for that you meet each of us right where we are and then move us towards you. Amen. So how do we get to Jesus? I want to start this kind of trying to answer this question today with a passage from James, and I know I got some James fans in the house. I'm going to go through James here, chapter 2, verse 14 to 18. And here's what James tells us, and I'm using the Message translation for this. It says, "Dear friends, do you think you'll get anywhere in this, our faith, our belief in him, in God, in Jesus, if you learn all the right words, but don't do anything?" Does merely talking about faith indicate that a person really has it? For instance, if you come upon an old friend dressed in rags and half starved and say, "Good morning, friend, be clothed in Christ, be filled with the Spirit," and walk off without providing so much as a coat or a cup of soup, where does that get you? Isn't it obvious that God talk without God acts is outrageous nonsense? I want to pause right here, and I know if Dustin was here, he would say it. Early this week, we had a family member, a Converge member, who was in need, a financial hardship place. And it was dire. And the text went out to men, "We're going to need some money to make this work. It's not right that this person is where they are, and we got to help." 2 hours later, we had raised 1.5 times the money just through Venmo and texting and app. And I knew this was coming, that I was going to speak on this. And my heart just fills and overwhelms with joy at you men who stepped up and said, "It's not just talk. I'm going to put my money where your mouth is." And I know it didn't go out to all of you, and some of you were like, "Hey, man, how come I couldn't help?" Look, you're next time, okay? But I got to say, that's what he's talking about here. When the call goes out and you know there's a need, that we get behind it. And it's not just, my faith is a personal thing and I just don't do anything. I just come and kind of hang out, breathe air, fill space, take a chair, go home. That you engage. And that's what James is saying here, that we get to engage, that we do something, that we serve in some way. Did you know even giving is a form of service? It is, because we're doing something with what we believe. And he goes on, let's go on here. I digress. In case you think that, let's make a division of labor. We'll get more things done with a division of labor in the church, won't we? I mean, so he's like, I can already hear some of you agreeing, James says, by saying, sounds good. So you take care of the faith department, Ed. You sound good at that. And I'll take care of the works department. You talk about it, and I'll do it. And I think sometimes we fall into that trap. Not so fast. James writes these words: "You can no more show me your works apart from your faith then I can show you my faith apart from my works. Faith and works. And then get it, he flips it here. Works and faith. Do you see? Faith and works, or works and faith. I've never noticed that before until this week. How he's getting to both sides of things. And it's like, I don't care what order I put it in. Faith and works, or works and faith, they both fit together hand in glove. So which comes first? Faith first and then works? Or works first and then faith? Have you thought about that before? Look, in the traditional church that I grew up in, there was one way to Jesus. You come to church on a Sunday. The pastor gives some sort of altar call. The pianist and organist are playing their thing. The music's going. And there's an altar down here, an old-fashioned altar. And you know altars are only about 100 years old, right? They only came during the Great Awakening. So there's an altar down here, and you come, and and what he says is have you stand and then raise your hand. And if you want to give and churches still do this all over the nation, raise your hand, and then you come down, and then we pray a prayer. Then I have some people here who be out in front to give you these little cards. And you're going to fill out these little cards, and there's nothing wrong with this, you know. But this is the only way that we have typically thought about how this works to get to Jesus. So then we fill out these little cards. Then I get you into some sort of a Sunday school class, right? And then, you know, you start coming to church. And eventually then you'll start, somebody comes up, hey, would you like to teach our 2-year-old class? Hey, you know, I'm not sure. Hey, would you be willing to usher? You know, and that's kind of how it always worked. From the minute, man, I was born, raised in the church, this is what was modeled for me all the time. Anybody familiar with that model, right? That's kind of the model. And then we get involved. But my question today is, can the love of Jesus be experienced differently for some of us? That's a great model. The question is it the only one? Does that make sense? So I'm not disparaging that. That has been great. Great. I got to tell you, in my own story, to be honest, if you were to ask me, hey, Ed, what day did you give your life over to Christ? Pray that sinner's prayer, you know, that we call it. I don't got one because I grew up in church. I must have prayed that prayer 1,000 times, you know, in different ways and forms. I don't know. All I've ever known is Jesus. Now, that's a pretty good testimony, right? But that's mine. My testimony is weird because I don't have a day. I remember trying to fill out some applications for stuff, pastory type things, and they always ask, what day did you give your life to Christ? I'm like, I don't know. So I just lie every time because I got to pick a date because that's the big expectation. I don't know. I'll put my 6th birthday. Good enough, you know, because you got to fill this blank in. But really, I don't have that. Wasn't a part of my story. And I suspect that for some of you, that's not going to be a part of your story. Is going to be like my story. It's going to be different and unique in your path to Jesus. What I want to do is unpack part of the Gospel of Mark. I love this gospel. I love this gospel because, A, it's short. And I love this gospel because Mark just gets at it. Man, he just gets right after it. And Mark, the Gospel of Mark, I'm going to take a teacher Ed is going to go for a second. The Gospel of Mark is basically 2 halves of a book. The first half of the book says, we're going to ask this question, who is this man? And we're going to see it from a bunch of different perspectives. And then the second half of the book of Mark is, well, now that we kind of know who he is, what are you going to do about that in your life? So that's what Mark does. That's kind of how he writes his gospel or his testimony about Jesus. So I want to take a kind of a cue from Mark and look at some of the groups that he portrays for us as they're trying to come to Jesus. And says, who is this man? So let's do that very quickly this morning as we figure out how people engage and figure out this question. And the first group we're going to talk about today is the Pharisees. And I call this group the come and gripe group. The Pharisees, come and gripe. These are the guys that have all of the religious education. These are the guys that have all of the religious works. But these are the guys, and you would think that they would be the most to support something that God was doing in Israel. Man, if God is up to something, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, these religious leaders, they should be right on top of it, right? Leading the way. Now, this was the come and gripe group. Let me show you, and we're going to stick in Mark 3 here for a bit. In Mark chapter 3, verses 1 through 6, this is how it goes down. He says these words, Mark pens, Jesus went into the synagogue again, that's their church, and noticed a man with a deformed hand. This guy has a disability, a physical disability, a noticeable disability. I get that. I think I've shared with you before. My brother has cerebral palsy. You can see it. It's physical. I could picture my brother's face on this guy. And since it was Sabbath, Jesus' enemies, right? So he's in the synagogue, and it's on their Sabbath day. Now, their law was no work on Sabbath. All right. So, Jesus' enemies, now when it says enemies, translate Pharisees, the come and gripe group. If he was going to see if he heals this guy's hand or not. And they planned to accuse him of working on the Sabbath. Verse 3. Jesus said to the man with the deformed hand, come and stand in front of everyone. Then he turned to his critics and said, look, does the law permit good deeds on the Sabbath? Or is it just a day for doing evil? Do you read like rhetorical questions and sarcasm into people's stuff in the Bible? You should. Because they're just like us. And I think I could see the sarcasm in Jesus right here. He's all like, you idiots, I'm just going to, Is this a day to save a life or to destroy it? I think he's being Captain Obvious here for a reason. And they don't answer him for good reason. So verse 5, he looks around at them and he's angry. And angrily, he was deeply saddened by their hard hearts. And he said to the man, hold out your hand. And the man held out his hand and it's restored. And at once the Pharisees went away and met with the supporters of Herod to plot how to kill Jesus. They couldn't see it. In a come and gripe approach to Jesus. If that's the path, some people on that come and gripe approach, nothing is better than what I know. It's all about how good I am and how I look. And they say, well, that's not the way it's done. You can only do it this way. And Jesus is like, but I'm about doing good. I don't care what you say. I got to do good. The kingdom is at hand, and people got to know me, and they got to know Jesus. And they got to know my Father. And so, for the come and gripe group, I'm afraid to lose any influence or power or the things I like to do or the ways that I do life or the ways that I think life is right. And Jesus is like, that's not the way to me. Now, before we write this group off, there was a Pharisee named Nicodemus and another one named Joseph of Arimathea. And both of these men are recorded in the scriptures as coming to Jesus. Out of this come and gripe group, they do find their way to him. But it's very unique. And it was very difficult. Nicodemus was so afraid he had to meet Jesus at night. Joseph of Arimathea was the man who allowed Jesus to be buried in his tomb. And both of these religious leaders found their way to him. It's a tough way. It's a hard way. And there's obstacles in the path that way. But Jesus still calls us to himself. Let's go to another group. This is what I'm going to call the family group. Mark shows us the family. And this group I call the come and get. Okay? So Pharisees were come and gripe. These are come and get. And maybe this is a part of this Jesus' story you haven't seen before. But let's dive into it really quickly here. Mark chapter 30 again, verse 20 now and 21. He says, one time Jesus entered a house, and the crowds began to gather again. And soon, he and his disciples couldn't even find time to eat. They are just busy doing. And when his family heard what was happening, they cried, take him away. He's out of his mind, they said. His family, his mother, father, and younger siblings think he is off his rocker. This guy needs to be 5150'd, put in a padded room. He thinks he's something else, and he's not doing nothing but making problems and creating a lot of chaos, disrupting the social order. He's out of his mind. We got to come get him. And we see that then in a couple verses later. In verse 31, it says, Jesus' mother and brothers came to see him or get him. They stood outside and sent word for him to come out and talk with them. They're here to get him. So he knows if he goes outside, come here, Jesus. Come on, let's, it's okay. It'll be fine. We'll find you help. And off they go. So they came out, and he says, to talk with them, and a crowd was sitting around, and someone said, hey, your brother and your mother and brothers are here asking for you. And Jesus is like, oh, mm-mm. And then he takes this opportunity to say this, who is my mother and my brothers? Now, he's not disowning his family, immediate family, but he takes the time, just another teaching moment, to say, my perspective of family I'm about to do is going to grow exponentially. Because as I look around, here are my sisters, and here are my brothers too. Yeah, sure, I have a mom and brothers and sisters by blood, but check it out. My brother, my sister, my brother, my brother, my brother, my sister, my brother. You're all my family too. He says, anyone who does God's will is my family also. See, in the come and get approach to Jesus, Jesus is so out of touch. I just feel like Jesus is so out of touch, I dismiss him. Something must be weird. Something must be wrong with those guys. Something must be crazy with them. Or in this come and get, Jesus creates social disturbances that need to be stamped out. Or Jesus is too embarrassing. I'd rather not have him be a public part of my life. I don't want to show that I'm a Jesus follower. But before we write this group off, his mother, Mary, eventually comes to follow and believe fully in who he is, standing at the cross as he dies for us. And his brother James becomes one of the head of the Jerusalem church and becomes very influential in the church as a believer going forward. There are people who come to Jesus even when at first they think, I don't know about this guy. Let's go to another group really quickly, the crowd. The come and go group, the come and go. Those who appear to really be interested in Jesus. Mark chapter 3 again, verse 7. Jesus went out to the lake with his disciples, and a large crowd followed him. They came from all over Galilee, Judea, Jerusalem, Idumea, from the east of the Jordan River, as far as the north as Tyre and Sidon. And the news about his miracles, that's why they're coming, had spread far and wide, and from the next state over, from the next county over, they're coming to see Jesus. Vast numbers of people came to see him, verse 9. And it was so crowded, Jesus instructed his disciples to have a boat ready so that the crowd would not crush him. How to have a boat ready? He'd step in the boat, they'd take him a little bit offshore, people couldn't press into him in the water, then he could speak out and teach. Because now he's offshore a little bit, because everybody was wanting to come and touch. Everybody was wanting their piece of him. In this come and go approach, Jesus is the teacher, the do-gooder. Hey, that's good, right? He is. He was rabbi. He came, he taught. He still teaches today. But maybe nothing more. Maybe he didn't go as far as personal Lord or Savior yet. In a come and go approach, I use Jesus as a way to get what I want or need. Heard somebody say on the radio the other day that people go to church just for appearance sake. Maybe. I believe you're here because there's something more that you experience about Jesus on a Sunday morning than just putting in an appearance. Yeah. That you can leave saying, I connected with Jesus this morning in some way. But before we write this group off, the disciples started in a crowd. I mean, Jesus didn't just walk up to the disciples doing their boats at the lake, sight unseen, never having heard of him before, and go, hey, come follow me. Who are you? Right? That would be the response. But it wasn't. We're going to see that in half a second. Why? I think the Bible isn't explicit, but my guess is that they had kind of looked at Jesus already, checking him out, gone to a couple of big meetings. That's like us coming here. And so when Jesus pops the question and says, hey, you want to come? You want to follow? Yeah, you know what? I think I do. Enough curiosity had been built up. So starting as a part of the crowd, that's a good way to start, to come to Jesus. Even though it has its issues, that's a part of where it starts. And that leads us right to those disciples, the come and grow group. As we get near to Jesus, we finally get here to the come and grow group. As we get nearer and nearer to him, it's not just about what I get. It's not just about that there's issues. It's not that I think he's crazy. It's that something has finally brought me a little closer in and go, there is something here for me with Jesus. Come and grow. Those who figure Jesus out in their journey. Mark 1, let's see how he does this. Let me read about the call to these disciples that I was talking about. One day, Jesus was walking along the shore of the Sea of Galilee. He saw Simon and his brother Andrew throwing a net into the water, for they were fishing for a living. And Jesus called out to them, come follow me, and I'll show you how to fish for people. And they left their nets at once and followed him. A little farther up the shore, he saw Zebedee's sons, James and John, in a boat repairing their nets, and he called out at once to them, and they followed him also, leaving their father Zebedee in the boat with the hired men. The hired men and his father continued to be in the part of the crowd, but they said, I want to get in and get involved. These men knew about fishing, but none of their knowledge of fishing put food on the table. I'm going to go back to James here real quick. They had to work, didn't they? They had to put their knowledge to work, repairing nets, taking out boats, casting nets, hauling fish in, getting fish prepared for market. They had a lot of work to do. It's not just I could stand and say, well, I know what to do. I know how to fish. I know how to do the nets. Watched everybody do it. I know how to do it. I should be a really good fisherman. Nah, you're not a good fisherman until you fish. And Jesus comes along and says, I want to put you to work fishing for people now. Not, I want you to believe in me. Did you notice that? I'm going to put you to work, Jesus says. I'm going to get you serving. I'm going to get you going. I'm going to get you active. I'm going to plug you in. Then we're going to travel together, and you're going to get to know me. Faith and works and faith go together hand in hand. You see how this is working? So what's he going to put him to work doing? He's going to put him to work sending them out. There's a couple of places in the Gospels where he sends them out 2 by 2. You guys go, cast out demons, heal the sick. Man, make it happen. Let people know the kingdom of God is near. Testify about it. Do the work. Or when they came up and they had huge thousands and thousands of people, and they're like, Jesus, send them all away to go fend for themselves to eat. And Jesus is like, I want you guys to do it. There's work to be done, and you do it. Of course, they didn't want to do the work. That's why they suggested sending everybody away. Jesus says, no, go find out what you got. They come back with this meager report of a couple of loaves and a couple of fish, right? And, 5 loaves, 2 fish. And here's all we got, Jesus. Well, And Jesus is like, time for me to do my work. And I'll bless it and pray. Off it goes. Now you distribute the baskets. They fed everybody with food left over. Faith and works and faith go together hand in hand. And eventually, after years of following Jesus, we come to the part of Mark right in the middle where we get to know him. And here's how it looks. Mark chapter 8, 27 to 29 says this, Jesus and his disciples left Galilee and went up to the villages near Caesarea Philippi. And as they were walking along, he says, hey, who do people say I am? The big question, who is this man? And Jesus himself, now in the middle of Mark, says, I'm going to ask it myself. Who do you think I am? Well, they replied, some say John the Baptist, some say Elijah, and others say you are one of the other prophets come to life. And he asks him, he goes, yeah, I get all that. I know what the Pharisees think of me. I know what the crowd thinks of me. I know what my family thinks of me. Who do you say I am? You've been walking with me for years. You've been doing things with me, working, serving with me. Who do you say I am now after all this time? And Peter replies, you are Messiah, the Christ, the chosen, the anointed one. You are God. I think no matter where you start your journey into Jesus, from the come and gripe to the come and get to the come and go, or maybe you feel like you were one of the ones that Jesus said, let's go do some stuff together. Come and serve. I think we find a way to Jesus because Jesus goes and gets the sheep wherever he is. Jesus comes and finds you, us, me, the lost sheep, wherever I am, and says, I'm going to take you from where you are and come and have you come with me, even if we're going to hang out and do serving together for a while as you get to know who I am and deepen your relationship in me. And I think that's legit. I love that. Faith and works and faith go together hand in hand. Our story this morning is about a guy who, like me, has a different path to Jesus. His path, although he knew who Jesus was, there was something about traveling together with people and serving that helped him really plug in. You know what? Let's not hear it just in my words. Let's hear it from him. My buddy Jason Wagner. Let's hear his story.
Jason Wagner, Converge interview. My name is Jason Wagner, and this is my story. My life with Jesus started when I was young. Really young, I was actually baptized as a Lutheran with the family. We never really attended church much. As a teenager, I went seeking something that was missing in my life, and I used to study with, say, the Jehovah's or the Mormons when they stopped by. At one point in time, I would have weekly study sessions with the Jehovah's, and they tried to get me to come over and convert to the church, but I didn't see a fit for me there, and I kept searching and studied with the Mormons because they invited me because they knew I was studying. At that point in time, I veered more away from Jesus, but before that, I was involved with the youth group in the local churches in Elk Grove area. I used to go hang out, help with the events, as much as I could. But then I started working and started living life as just any adult would, and strayed away for a while. And then I grew, started growing up, making money, paying rent, paying the bills, and just having fun as a 20-something-year-old. I really didn't think about Jesus that often. I was just busy, friends, life, work, and just focusing on just that kind of stuff every day. I wasn't focusing on my inner self and finding that heart-to-heart with Jesus. I really wasn't. And after my folks got married, Melissa and Jonathan got married, is when I started getting more interested again. And Jonathan and Melissa found a home in Impact for a long time, for over a decade. And I would join them, on occasion, try to help out where I could, and volunteered here and there, but I never had weekends off. Working retail and that kind of stuff in sales, it sort of pulled me away from having that time to, help where I wanted to. 2 years ago, it's like, hey man, sorry I don't see you more, but once I get Sundays off, I'm going to be there. And then about a year ago is when I started showing up, just a little over a year ago, and actually started learning the ropes and just showing up and saying, hey, what can I help with? I always wanted to learn engineering more. At one point in time, I was even looking into doing auto engineering for school, but it was so expensive. It was just unattainable for me at the time, and this itself was a huge opportunity for me to always do something that I wanted, and I just dove in. Typical Sunday for me is definitely waking up early, getting out of the house, showing up to the theater by 7 to 7:05, pushing a trailer loaded with over 10,000 pounds of equipment out and down into the theater, loading up, setting up. My specific duties is mainly video, and so the projector and the lights and running cables. So we set it up, and usually by a little after 8 o'clock, we're making sound. The stage is up, the band's ready, and they run through a rehearsal and make sure the songs are nice and tight and make arrangements where they need to. And after that, rehearsal is done. By that time, I have the lights dialed in, the projector's on and lined up, and we got the video ready to rock and roll with the cameras. And from there, we sit down and have a little run through and a little prayer before we start service, and then everybody starts rolling in. Everybody gets greeted, seated, everybody gets to see each other again, because we come together as a big happy family every week. And and then the service goes. And then we had to pack it up and roll it all back up the ramp and into the trailer. And by about noon, we get that finished. And Dustin just asked me, why in the world I do this every week? All that work, it's just because I have a love and dedication for Jesus, and the people that are in that church, they're my family now. I show up for them and they show up for me. It's not even being inside the walls of the church that we do it for each other. There's plenty of opportunity outside the walls of church. People help out each other, people doing things for each other. We just had some great news today that was shared right through the app, and so many people giving blessings, today, and prayers, and it's just a wonderful community to be with. Personal changes since I got plugged in has definitely been friends is a huge one. The more camaraderie with people in the environment that I grew up in. I've known these people for years, but I definitely made more friends, new friends. Chris Gibson has been huge, helping me and learning all this technology and actually being a good friend. He's helped me out, and help me with things that I needed it. And, I always, if he needs something, I'm always there to help him out now too. He always knows he can call on me to get stuff done. Where I was a year ago to where I am now, definitely have a deeper understanding of Jesus and my relationship with him and him with me. It's just, he's always there with me. And I never really understood that. I always lived by faith and salvation alone in my 20s and my early 30s, but that's just not enough. You got to have the community, you got to have the friends, and that's what Converge brought to the table for me, and I love it. To that person that's not plugged in, I just had to say that Jesus loves you and accepts you as you are. He will accept you when you come in those doors. He'll accept you if you don't come in those doors. Yeah, regardless of where your expertise is, what you do and do not know how to do, there's always something for you to help out with. Or you can just show up and enjoy communing with God on your own, in your own time. There's people there to pray for you if you need it, and there's always a place for you to come. What I learned in my story so far is showing up and does a lot to help the people around you without even you realizing it. Just showing up and helping out is a huge step to where when I stepped into it and learned all these new things that I didn't know how much I was actually helping. And then that one day when Dustin came to me and said, "Hey, dude, we can't do this without you," I was genuinely shocked and surprised, and at the same time, super happy. It's just because I had progressed so far with my story from the beginning of when I started with Converge in just less than a year, and that made myself indispensable. And I wasn't trying to be an indispensable person. I was just always hungry to learn something new. And doing it with Jesus just made it a huge benefit. My name is Jason Wagner, and I'm the hardest working man at Converge. And this is my story.
Amen, my buddy. I second that. In fact, Jay, if you come on up here, I know I got a mic for you right here, bro. While the band's getting ready, I want him to come up here. Got a couple of couple of questions for him here. What do you think, while he's coming up here, what do you think Jason's love language is, if you know what that is? Acts of service. That's right, acts of service. And I was moving a month ago, and I've talked about that a little bit, and I moved all the little stuff, and then I had about 10 big things, and guess who helped me move the big things? This guy. I've told you in person before, but brother, thank you. I couldn't have moved without you. It's not just in the walls of this church he serves. He serves outside the church too. And he didn't do it because I'm a pastor. He did it because we're friends. And I appreciate that about you. Jason, man, you talked about being indispensable. One thing I just want to tell you is you're not just indispensable here. You're indispensable to Jesus too, bro. 100%. That's how much he loves you. Do you remember the first time we met?
Vaguely, first.
I think you're on. Yeah, you should be on.
Vaguely, first time.
When did we meet? Really, the first time I recollect meeting you. It was a year and a half ago. Do you remember when it was? What we were doing?
We were doing small groups.
We were doing small groups, the men's small group, right? And I walked in, kind of not knowing anybody and being super quiet and broken, and you were there. And you were one of those guys that we met then. And I love that. See, what Jason isn't telling you is that today he just isn't serving. He was attending a small group. And there's also something that you and I just started here as of late. But we just actually kind of, for the first time, can you talk about that for half a second?
Oh, yeah, we just started studying the Bible together. Just learning to come closer to Jesus.
So we started doing some one-on-one discipling together. You see where Jesus is taking my friend Jason? His work and his serving the church is now moving towards Jesus doing something in your heart differently. And you didn't talk about that much, so I thought I would ask you one last question here. So talk about, like, because you talked about the service stuff, great, and all those who serve, man, that is tremendous, and that is precious to Jesus and to us, and that is a way to get to know Jesus, but you're getting to know Jesus in a more personal way today. Is that not true?
It's very true, yes.
Yeah, so talk about what that means for you.
Well, it just means it opens my heart to see life in a new light, and just everyday life in a just nice, like, brilliant place to be. Because when you don't have that in your heart, sometimes it can be a pretty scary place out there.
Yeah.
Especially when you live on your own, but it's nice to have family and friends to help you, along the way, which I do have, and a lot of that family is here.
Yeah.
With you guys.
Yeah, and friends. And I couldn't be more proud of you. I couldn't be more proud of this guy, Dustin too, I know, at his journey to Jesus. Is he doesn't just do the work side of the equation, but the faith side too. And you're working with both. And bro, it's awesome. And you are, and your life does give us an example of a way to come to Jesus through using your love language and your acts of service and your works in a way that Jesus deepens a relationship with you. And that is a beautiful thing. Would you give it up for Jason one more time? Love you, buddy. Thanks for coming. I'll let you take the mic back with you. Just want to close out real quickly here. I love it when people get those hand and glove things, the faith and works and faith. And I think that's the way it is. That those who serve, this group right here, you are so good and so faithful. I know we have a few missing, but you guys and enjoy, like, because you do kids too, and Jason and Michelle, I know you're there and you're faithful. Some of you guys, I'm not even going to be able to name anybody. Gibby for sure, brother. You guys are so faithful to serve. We've got prayer teams and other ministries that are doing their thing, and God doesn't waste any of that serving. But then also, there's the faith component as we grow together, as we follow to get to know him better. And that's the church of power. That's the church that Jesus is going to use to get the kingdom on earth. That's the church that's going to accomplish stuff. And that's you, us, Converge. One of the things that Jason said that I love here as we kind of bring this all into focus is he said, show up, plug in. One of the things I love about Jason is, man, he's just going to say it right. Like me, I kind of like use my words to get at something kind of round like this, Jason's just like, show up and plug in. He's just going to say it like it is. Show up and plug in. And I think that I started thinking about that, and I was like, you know what? That's really good advice. Show up, but then plug in to growing through discipling, like Jason is, like many of you are. We got those small group signups. That's the easiest way to really start plugging in to doing that. You can do that through the app or out there today. We talked about that. Then you also plug into growth through serving, engaging culture. So the first one is discipling, knowing Christ. Then we plug into serving, engaging culture, even this culture. And then we plug into family, our family, the family that Jesus said, my brothers and my sisters, through building relationships. Do you see what Jason's suggesting there? That you plug in by knowing Christ, that you plug in engaging culture, and you plug in building relationships. And what are those three things? That's our Converge vision. That's our Converge vision. And we plug into there's three parts of the vision for a reason, because we plug in to all three things, and it's great. And Jesus then uses that. See, Converge is about all three ways of plugging in, and that's why all three are in our vision. There's no division of labor. Like James said, there's no division of labor. We get to go do it all. And Jesus this morning is calling us all into some area, maybe just a little further, a little deeper, a little more. For some of us, he might be saying, you really know, but you don't do much to serve. Come engage with us like Jason. Some of you say, man, you're really good at serving, but you don't know so well. So get into discipling and let's grow together. Some of you, he's like, well, you know when you serve, but you don't connect in relationship really well. Let's build some family. Let's build some family. Even for those who aren't in our family yet. We're going to release the band here in a second. In fact, just stand with me right now as we going to close with a quick song about Jesus finding us. And as you sing, I just want to invite you to reflect on where Jesus has found you, and how he's leading you to him in your own unique path. So that once you get to Jesus, you get to heaven, you get to Father. And say, Jesus, where do I need to press in? In your own heart and spirit, would you just ask him that question as you sing? Relationship, engaging culture, knowing Jesus. Let's do all three together. Let's sing, and then I'll come back to dismiss.